Hey guys, Martin here. Thanks for watching the last video and commenting on the video showing the stash that I had, and a lot of people commented, and it seems that consensus of opinion is leaning towards the F-4C Phantom for me to model, so that's going to be the choice for me going forward. It's been over 2 months since I built a model, so I am now going to use that to get my mojo flowing. So I've been requested by a few people, asked if I'll do an inbox review, so I will. I already opened the box about half an hour before doing this video. Just wanted to check everything was there. It is there, so let's take a look. There's the box. Monogram F-4C Phantom 148 kit, skill level 2, which is age 10 plus. It's got some images down the side showing the cockpit, the ordnance on the underside. Comes with 4 AIM-7 Sparrow missiles, 4 AIM-9 Sidewinders, and it comes with long range fuel tanks, 1 under each wing. Comes with a choice of two choices of electronic countermeasure pods, ECMs, and it comes with a gun pod for the centre of the fuselage. That's showing the standing figure, and that's showing the finished article with all the decals in place. Telling you the length of the aircraft, 14.5 inches, wingspan 9 1/8, 99 parts in the kit, and then we have all the colours that are to be used in here, no reference numbers though. That's it, so let's open the box and have a look what we got inside. So what we have is we have 2 bags of grey sprues and a bag of clear, which is in here. So 1 clear bag, 2 grey bags. One has 3 grey sprues in it and one has 4 grey sprues in it. Then we have the instruction booklet and decals inside. So we'll put the decals to a side in a minute. We'll have a look at the instruction booklet. Just a little bit of history about it, very short, and on the first page it's black and white. Second page is the colour references, colour call-outs, no numbers, just says aluminum, dark green, grey green, blah blah blah. Then we have a parts list on page 3 and page 4, so 2 pages of parts list, and it's showing 87 of those 99 parts to be used, so I guess some of these parts, there's going to be a few off like the missiles, so there's 87 different numbered parts. And regarding assembly instructions, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stages of assembly, and then stage 10 is painting and decals on 12 and 13 on the back page. The back page does illustrate some FS numbers for the colours, but it's in black and white. I'd be willing to pay another 50 cents, probably $1 for a colour booklet. Always better in colour. because sometimes, as you can see, some of those shades can look the same, especially those darker ones. There's 161 decals and stencils in total, so a lot of stencils, a lot of decals going on this plane. So let's have a look at the assembly instructions. Stage 1 is the standing figure, putting him together and painting him, and again it just calls out black boots and gloves, dark grey mask and hose, flesh, face and hands. So no colour call outs, just the colours themselves, no reference numbers. Stage 1 also consists of painting the ejector seat, the back of the seats, putting the top of the ejector seats on with the rip cords, and then the instrument panels for the front and rear instrument panels, which can be painted or there's decals included. And then the last part of stage 1 is assembling all of the cockpit and painting that cockpit tub. Stage 2 then moves on to assembling the tub inside the starboard side of the fuselage, then assembling the two halves together. Part B of stage 2 is assembling the upper wings to the lower wing assembly, which isn't assembly, it's just a full piece that contains all of the bottom wing sections and the lower fuselage section. And then part C of stage 2 is assembling the fuselage to that wing assembler. So straightforward, nothing's looking difficult so far. Stage 3 of the assembly instructions is assembling the stabilizers, the horizontal stabilizers, and then setting them at the angle as it shows. Doesn't give you an angle, but use a protractor and measure it, or take a look on Google and see what the angle is supposed to be. And then another part of stage 3 is putting on the splitter plates onto the side of the fuselage and the air intake covers. The splitter plates to direct the air, the good airflow into the air intakes, so we've got good flow going into the turbine engines, and it splits away the air that's dragging around the fuselage, which would cause some interruption in the efficiency of the jet engines. And then the next stage is for doing the front wheel undercarriage area and adding some little details on there. I don't know what they are, but we can find out. And then the front wheel assembly, putting that together and then assembling it in place with the hydraulic actuator and the doors, and that's that front door section there. So again, looks straightforward. Stage 4 is going on to the undercarriage assembly doors for the wings, the port side and starboard side wheel, putting those wheel assemblies together and then assembling them in place under the wings with the doors and the actuators. You can see that. And then moving on to stage 5 is the wing flaps, set between 6 and 7 degrees, and that's going on the no, it's bigger than 6 and 7 degrees, so that's part 6, part 7. So assembling the the flaps into the port side starboard wings, and then moving on to the exhausts, jet exhaust, and locating them into the holes within the fuselage assembly. Moving on, stage 6. It looks like a gun pod, so assembling the gun pod, putting the gun pod on the underside on a pylon, And then looks like assembling the two of the AIM-7 Sparrow missiles onto the fuselage, underside of the fuselage. And then this looks like the ECM pods, two different choices depending on which aircraft you're going to do, because it comes with two decal options. So there's two choices of ECM there: electronics countermeasure devices for jamming radar, sonar, laser, infrared signals that are trying to track the location of the aircraft. And then stage 8 is what look like the AIM-9 Sidewinder missiles. Got to stick a couple of fins on those. Looks like they come in solid, and there'll be 4 of those, 2 on each wing, and then assemble those to the pylons. And then we move on to stick in the second set of AIM-7 Sparrows to the front side of the fuselage, and then putting on the electronic countermeasure pod onto the underside. And there's also the option to put a photo pod. That's a photo pod, part number 47. So you got the choice there between the ECM or a photo pod. And then we move on to the last part of stage 8, which is fitting the AIM-9's Sidewinder missiles onto the wings, onto the underside of the wings. And the last stage of assembly is putting the two halves of the long-range fuel tanks together and assembling them under the wings. Then assembling the canopies and the canopy frames. You can have the canopies in the open position or the closed position. I'll be doing it in the open position. And then the last part of the assembly is just putting on aerials, antennas, pitot tubes, etc. And then we move on to the colours, and as I said earlier, it's black and white, which is a shame. I'd pay a little extra to get a colour booklet, and the two different styles, they're almost identical, except they're flown by two different guys. One's for the 19MC 63-7584 Tactical Fighter Training Wing, piloted by Brigadier General Fred Eifner, LA-58. And then the next one is 19MC 63-7550 Tactical Fighter Training Wing, and the pilot for that is Commander Lieutenant Colonel Barry Howard, LA-550. One of these has black and white stripes and the other has red and white stripes. So I've not made my mind up which one I'm going to go for yet. And there's a plan view showing the camouflage pattern on the top and the underside. It's showing to paint the wingtips white and then black decals for the stripes. But the centre stripes, it's a full decal, white and black stripe decal. So the option, I guess, to paint everything if you want to do that, mask and paint everything instead of using decals. And then we go on to the decals themselves, and as I said, there's 161 decals, so a lot of decals. So page 12 and 13 show the decal placements, and then, as I said earlier, we have the FS colours, which you can convert to different manufacturer brand equivalents using a chart offline. Alright guys, that's that with the stencils. We'll take a look at the decals now. Alright, they look very glossy. No carrier film. The decal goes right to the edge, and as I said, a lot of stencils. So a ton of stencils on this job, so it's going to take a lot of time doing that. Minimum carrier film, but what I will say is they are thicker than some decals we get. These were printed 2009. They're Revell's own decals, which are generally good. But I'm just worried about the thickness and that gloss, getting that matted down and hiding the edges so they don't stand out. So that's decals done. So next we'll move on to looking at the sprues. So I'll start with the clear sprue first. And what I'm noticing first, if you can see that, is there's a black spot on the rear caniper. And that's not a blemish, it's nothing stuck to it, that's moulded in. So what that is, it's a bit of material, dark material that was run in a mould on the particular press that they used, and the barrel nozzles weren't cleaned, purged out properly, so some residue from a dark material on a previous mould that was run has come out and got into the clear plastic. Well, the parts do look clear apart from that black speck. They are wavy. I don't know whether you can see that, but there's some waviness in there. They're not ultra clear. Some distortion going on. They're smooth, it's just they've not packed out so much, I don't think. Or there's an inconsistency in the thicknesses that's creating that wave effect. Well, the tool was made back in 1979. This box says 2011. There's been iterations since then, not to the tool, just additional parts were added, and decals have been changed 6 times, and it's been reboxed a few times as well. These decals are the last decals that were designed for this set, which were back in 2009. So it's been 5 years since there's been any reiteration to this kit. Well, apart from that black blemish, they don't look too bad for the age of the kit. Let's move on to the first bag of grey parts, grey sprues. This is the port side fuselage off, and I'm looking out for sink marks, which I don't see any, so that's good. It's all raised detail, but it's fine detail. We've got panel lines and rivet details, and they're all raised, but they're fine. So I guess you could use those if you're critical about having recessed panel lines. You could use those as guidelines to engrave your scribe your panel lines in there, and then when you smooth it all down you get rid of those raised lines, but I'm not going to do that. You can also just spray the aircraft aluminum or silver, and then when you've put your top layer of paint on, you can use some smooth emery board, something like a 1600 grit, just to break the paint and show some of that aluminum or silver through. Flash, I'm just seeing a bit around the HUD area on that front, but everywhere else looks pretty good. Just a little bit here on that edge there, which isn't too bad for an old tool, so I'm guessing they've done some addressing work to the tool, cleaned up part lines and these shut-off features as it's worn over the years. The arrestor hook is moulded in solid there, so I guess you could cut that arrestor hook out, scribe around there, cut it out and show it in a pose position if you wanted to put it on a aircraft carrier deck vignette diorama and have that grabbing a cable. I guess you could do that. But on the whole, that looks fine, just that little bit of flash, no sink, and delicate raised panel lines. So look at the starboard side. Again, I'm not seeing any sink, just flow marks which don't hurt the surface. A little bit of flash again in this area, which will need cleaning up around that shutout. And then some more on this half of the hood, the HUD head-up display area. There's some detail inside the cockpit on the wall there. It's very fine. I don't know if you can see how fine that is. At least it's something. It's better than nothing. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that. Probably not by the time the seats are in there and the tub, cockpit tub. We have a couple of AIM-7 Sparrow missiles on here, on both of these sprues. And they do have ejector pins on the fins, which will have to be cleaned off, which is a ball ache. And then inside the undercarriage doors there's some nice recessed panels and rivet details, but there are ejector pins in there as well that will have to be cleaned. No ejector pins in the tub area on the fuselage halves, so they're outside of the tub half, so you won't see those. But generally they look okay, apart from those small ejector pins on the Sparrow missiles and in the undercarriage doors. Moving on to the third sprue in that bag, we have the standing figure and the pilot. A lot of flash around the figures, around the part line of those figures, so they'll need cleaning up. Wheels come in two halves. There is flash around the part line, around the bottom edges of these wheels, but when you glue them together we always smooth down those glue joints, so that's going to go out anyway, so that doesn't concern me. We have a joystick there, wheel struts for the port side and starboard side wheels. They look pretty good. I'm not seeing flash on those. Actuators, cylinders for the undercarriage doors. Again, they look good. Small parts, but I'm not seeing flash. Top of the ejector seats with the ripcords for fine detail. They look pretty good. There's just a bit of flash on the edge of that one, which is fine. That'll come off easier. And that looks like the front wheel undercarriage door. Again, a little bit of recessed panel work there and some engraved detail. These are the air intake covers. Again, raised panel lines and rivet details. Some flash around the bottom edges which will need cleaning up. But they look okay. There's no stress marks, ejector pin stress marks or anything, or sink. Onto the cockpit tub. As you can see there, a lot of fine detail in there on the console sides and engraved seat belts for the seats. So I don't know whether I'll be able to highlight all that detail because it's really faint, really delicate. I'll have a go. And then we have the front wheel, two halves of the wheels and the front wheel strut. They look okay. Just a bit of flash again around the bottom edge where the joints come together on the part line. That's the camera pod. That's an option if you want to use that, or an ECM on one side of the plane. And that's that sprue. So that's 3 down, 4 more sprues to go. Let's pull this one out. This one has the engine exhausts. They're just a certain depth that drop into the holes on the fuselage. Not a lot of good detail, but it's got the fins around here that you can highlight. shows some burn marks, different steel colours, burnished steel, and try and give some effect. Then we move on to the ECM pod and some pylons, and the pylons look great actually. They've got lots of panel lines and rivet details on there. I mean, some people just have them smooth, but at least this has some detail on there. There's another pylon. No flash around those, but we do have ejector pins on those pylons. Look, 1, 2, 3 ejector pins on each pylon, which is a bummer because you have to fill those to make them disappear. And there's 2 ejector pins on this pylon as well. So, because it's an old tooling from '79, back then they didn't bother about ejector pins where they placed them as much as they do today. Tamiya kits, they place them on the runners, push off on the runners, and they'd have a couple of runners on each side, so they've got an equal amount of force on both sides of the part to help force the part out. And then this is the gun pod that goes on this under the centre of the fuselage, 2 halves, and again that has some raised panel line and rivet details. I'm not seeing any flash around it. Looks pretty good. And then we have the instrument panel, which again has some very faint detail on there. I don't know whether I'm going to be able to highlight that, but there are decal options. But overall it looks pretty good. Just the little placements of ejector pins on pylons. These are the rear horizontal stabilizers. Again, some raised panel line details and rivets. On the underside though, on the ejector side of the mould, they've got 3 ejector pins, 1 in each corner, to help push these parts out, which I'm not happy about. And then on this one, on the port side stabilizer, it's got Revell Incorporated 1979 China. That's going to have to be smoothed off. Ejector pins filled and smoothed. But other than that, there is some flash along the part line, or mismatch, where they've matched the 2 halves together. So that's going to have to be cleaned down, these leading edges around those parts. But it's an old mould. On to the next one. These are the upper wings. The wing tips are solid because the rest of the wings are on the bottom piece that these drop onto, and it's got some raised detail and rivets. I'm not seeing any sink, which I thought the possibility of it being a lot thicker than the rest of the moulded part. But on the top side, the wings are nicely engraved, raised panel line details over and rivets, but it's delicate again. No ejector pin stress marks. Flash just at the corners here. Both of these parts have got flash at the ends there. And just a little bit along the edge that joins to the fuselage, so that'll be cleaned up. And just a little bit on the ends. But no ejector pins on the outside of these parts. And these are the 4 halves that make up the 2 long range fuel tanks, 1 on each wing. And again they have some raised panel line and rivet details. The pylons on here are moulded in, so there's no ejector pin marks on those pylons because they're on the underside. And then we have the splitter plates here. There's some nice engraved detail in there on the splitters. Ejector pins are at the end, which doesn't matter because that's hidden down inside the air intake. You're just going to see this front end. And then we have pylons for Sidewinder missiles. They look good. And I'm not seeing ejector pin marks on there because, as you can see, they've used 4 ejector pins on the runner systems outside, and then they put a flow leader across between the two and used an ejector pin on there. So they've got 5 ejector pins around to help push those out, which is good. Nothing on the pylons themselves. So again, that looks pretty decent. I'm happy with that. Just a little bit of cleanup, delicate flash. So the last but one sprue has the main underside of the fuselage and part of the wings contained in one moulded part. It's just a little bit of sink around these recessed features, and that's because we have these raised features on the underside where, you know, it's a wall section around those recessed features, and at the ends it must have got slightly thick because there's just a little bit of sink there. But there's some nicely engraved details in here, vents. Everything's got the raised delicate panel lines and rivets all over, but nice vent details, some piping in there in the undercarriage bay, and some ribs, and what look like some probably fluid reservoirs. And then we have Sidewinder missiles, 4 of those, and they're moulded solid. But that part looks okay apart from the sink. I'm not seeing flash or ejector pin stress marks on there. Looks okay. Oh, just a little bit of flash in these shut off areas where the core breaks through to create a opening. Just a bit on these edges around the part line, and then the sidewinders are all moulded solid there, as you can see. So because of that, again, they've put ejector pins on these fins, front and back. So we've got 4 ejector pins there to contend with. And because half of each missile is moulded in 2 halves of the mould when they come together, the part line isn't aligned very well, so there's a step. That's what we call mismatch, or a misalignment of the 2 halves. And that's on all of these 4 sidewinders. So some ejector pin cleanup, some mismatch cleanup. And then we've got undercarriage bay doors, and then another one of the instrument panels, again fine detail on there. I don't know whether I can make that stand out, but it's really fine, or whether to use a decal. And in these undercarriage areas and the door areas, there's some panel and rivet details engraved in there. So it looks okay for an old tool. There's the ejector seat backs with the engraved seat belts. So let's get on to the last sprue. This has 4 sidewinders. Again, they're all moulded solid, but the top fins aren't included. They're moulded separately. So I guess that's what they did for, I guess this is the additional parts, because on here we have sidewinders that are all moulded in, including the bottom fins. So all fins are moulded in, and here they've moulded the fins that would have gone into the mould, deep ribs in the mould, which are always a bitch trying to get them out, eject them out. They're moulding them separate to be stuck on. They've also changed the style of the fins on the front of the missile, as you can see there. So this makes them look a little more accurate to the way they should look, I guess. But ejector pins, do we have any on there? Yeah, there's some very small ejector pins. There's 2 on the shafts of those missiles. Alright, well that's it. That's all the parts. Generally, overall, what do I think? I know that I can buy this model off hobbylink.com. That's HOBBYLINC.com for $18.95. And I can buy it from scalehobbyist.com for the same price, $18.95. And in Hobby Lobby, it retails at $21.95. But if you've got a 40% Hobby Lobby coupon, which you can download from the hobbylobby.com website, keep it in your web browser on your cell phone when you go in the store, pick up your model, go to the desk, cashier, show her the coupon on your cell phone, and she'll take 40% off. There's a code on there that she just types in. It's a 4-number code. And with that 40% discount, it takes the $21.99 down to $13.19, which is what I paid for it. So for $13.19 from Hobby Lobby, I mean, it's great value. For $18.95 from elsewhere, again, for 7 grey sprues, clear sprues, sheet of 161 decals and stencils, an instruction booklet, and the packaging, I think it's reasonable value. I think you can't grumble at $18.95. It's something a teenager can afford from his paper round money or doing some part-time work. It's not a lot of money these days. It's about £12 in UK money. So yeah, on first opinions, first just looking at this kit, yeah, I'd say it's reasonable value. But when I've built it up, I'll get back to you with a report at the end of the build, and I'll reassess the value of the part, taking into consideration the engineering and the fits of this product, how it goes together. So until then, I hope you follow my build updates, guys, on this one. Thanks for watching the inbox review. Hope it's been valuable to some people out there, and happy modelling, guys. Keep up the great work and keep posting those videos. Alright, that's me out for now. Chocks away, tally-o.